Well, joining me now, as they do every Wednesday, former Labor member for Melbourne Port's Michael Danby and Sky News contributor Kosha Garda. Let's look first at Malaysia. This is an interesting election given how close they are to us. No parties have won a majority and there's been a stalemate over forming a coalition. The Malaysia King, will now pick the new Prime Minister and calls for the two contenders to work together. I'd call it a schmozzle, but I'm a bit more concerned by that because a very pro-Sharia law, Islamic law party has the majority, which could change things dramatically in Malaysia. What can you tell us?
That's right. It's, coming from a Western perspective or a freedom-loving perspective, that is concerning, and especially if you take it to its logical and extreme endpoint.
And we saw that in Brunei too, remember?
In Brunei and a little bit in Indonesia and elsewhere, when you see some of these factions gaining ground, it is worrying. The fact of the matter is Malaysia is a majority Muslim country. And from these election results, a plurality or even a majority of the electorate does seem to support this and is returning to sort of more of that that faction or that style of Islamic regime. And so, that is what it is. It also is a multicultural society. And I think, as we've seen, whether it's countries that are multicultural from the beginning or through immigration policy, it does lead to a big challenge where there are big swaths of the electorate that don't support that. And you might see a little bit of an exodus of Chinese and Indian people returning to their countries. And then you just see more polarization, I think, in that part of the world.
Michael, what do you make of it? Because the Sharia law component is what concerns me.
I'd be very concerned about it. I'm an old friend of Anwar Ibrahim, and I'm so sorry to see that sort of democratic forces in Malaysia haven't triumphed. It'll probably be in alliance with some of the Islamists in Sarawak and the Islamist Party, and that's led to a run on the Malaysian currency, the ringgit. So I think Malaysians have voted for a dimmer future for themselves, but that's their choice. Australia does have to be worried. They do train international terrorist groups classified by our parliament as terrorists, Hezbollah and Hamas there, because of their Islamist affiliation already.
What's the latest in Iran too? Because we saw protests end up at the World Cup.
That's right. I think whenever there's a disconnect between the people and the way they're governed, you're looking for avenues to redress grievances. And if the elections fall short or aren't fair or aren't even that democratic in that part of the world, it's going to bubble up into protests. So we're seeing that more and more. But the question is, what can other world powers do and what should they do? There's been a divergence in that in the past. President Obama very famously stepped away from the Green Revolution and didn't want to get involved. Right now, at least some actors in Iran are suggesting that foreign actors are stirring up the protests. So who knows, where this will land. But I think, it is troubling. We support the people, but the question remains, what, if anything, should other countries be doing?
Let's go to the World Cup, to the soccer in Qatar. It's now become a debate more about the crimes and the deaths and I guess the abuses of human rights in building the stadia. Also the circumstances in which Qatar got its bid up. It's dominated the debate far more than the football has. How do you see things?
Well, it's a disaster for Qatar. It was a crooked decision and an unethical decision in a place that doesn't have the tourist capacity, where you've got people paying $10,000 from Britain and Portugal staying in some shipping container with a fan. Imagine they could have come to Sydney. That's what Frank Lowy wanted them to do, and I think it would have been much better for FIFA. What a ridiculous thing for the Italian Secretary-General of FIFA to virtue signal without virtue that he's an Italian, he's a migrant, he's an Arab, he's a gay person. None of those things are true. The way they've behaved towards minorities, both in the building of it and in the operation of the thing, has reached the whole football cup, and that's such a shame for football.
I think there's a parallel here with the allegations of corruption around the awarding of the Olympic Games. The corporatisation, the money behind sport's gotten now way out of odds with the game it's supposed to be. And then, of course, you look at COP27, Kosha. It was supposed to be a meeting of leaders around the world around environmental issues. Now it's become a jamboree for all these hangers-on. Like, there's literally tens of thousands of people that turn up at these COP meetings, flogging whatever sort of latest green UBS product that will live and die on taxpayers' subsidies. It's a long way, 27 meetings ago, from what it was meant to be.
Always, as you say, the corporatization and scope creep, and then just these things bloat and become globalist infrastructures for sort of like a trade show, as you say, for people to come and flog on. The issue is transparency. Even if you agree with the concept, we don't know where the taxpayer money, how it's being spent. The issue is hypocrisy. Something like 400 private jets flew in to COP27. I think that says it all.
So they don't walk or come by train, Kosha?
Private jet, biggest carbon footprint.
I did ask your former colleague, the Minister Chris Bowen, exactly how much money was spent, what was the cost of the Australian Pavilion, how many officials we sent. I remember looking at the spending by Kevin Rudd on Copenhagen's COP meeting. It was like tens of millions of dollars. I might add, we haven't got a response yet back from the Minister, but what do you make of it?
Well, there should be an answer to that, because even if people are in favour of Chris Bowen's view of global warming, there should be an open accountability so people can see the cost of prosecuting this kind of argument versus the benefits that Australia gets. I think the really big issue is the issue that you focus on and this station focuses on, and that is energy security and the price for Australians of electricity. I think that's our major problem. And we need more gas in Victoria and all around Australia. Supply. I don't hate to be a supply sider, but it's so obvious.
What about the reparations debate, though? Because, I mean, China will never contribute to a reparations fund because it's not classed as a developed country. It's developing, according to the UN. So it's more likely to have its hand out for money, even though it's the world's biggest emitter.
I wouldn't be giving Beijing $1. And I think it's a mistake for us to sort of lead the charge in this reparations debate. There are much more deserving people in the South Pacific who need our aid, and it's in our national interest to do that. And above all, why should we be subsidising people in some countries overseas when pensioners and poor people, etc., here in Australia are thinking about switching off their electricity or gas because they can't afford it?
You're a fair income Labor man, not many of you left. Just quickly, your president, US president, although you know, you're Australian as well, 80, oldest president in history. Surely that's 80 and out, isn't it? No, not going to go around again.
That's what people seem to think, but you know, he's not backing down. He was just in a press conference the other day saying he's going to run. So, and we're in this format of the election right now where so many votes and the enterprise of collecting balloting means that candidates that aren't very strong seem to be winning. So, you know, who knows?
And he has to say he's going to win anyway, otherwise he's a complete and utter lame duck with 2 years to go.
That's right, he's playing the game.
Playing the game. There you go, playing the game.